This time, Poland World Cup 74, the world's best third-place team.
And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more. And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the seemingly impossible to work out and rank and decide once and for all which is the greatest team of all time. My name's Graham Dunn, and joining me as ever is Jamie Rooney. Hi, Jamie.
Hello, Graham. Back for our Polish delight and looking forward to part two, discussing, we've already discussed a very brilliant Polish team, and it's only really now in reflection, even though our listeners haven't heard it yet, in reflection of us recording it previously and doing this new intro, how close they came to winning the whole thing in 1974, and what a brilliant team they were. And also the brilliance that we learned from Pawel, that Poland in a World Cup fixture triggered the downfall of communism. I mean, learning something every week on this podcast.
So for those of you who didn't listen last week, we were joined by Pawel Maszczyk. We've decided to split that episode into two episodes. So we did Gornik Żabsza last week, which does mean that there's no normal introduction with Pawel for this one, because we used it last week, which explains why we're talking in between time zones here.
Yeah, we really are in a time machine right now.
But we will have the time machine from last week at the end of this as well. So without any further ado, shall we go into Poland World Cup 74? So now we come on to Poland and a sort of a great era of Team World Cup. We're going to really focus around the World Cup of 1974 because there's some great stories around that. But actually, this Poland team is one which is, Jamie, I guess it's part of a strong era of football for Poland, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of leads on where we've been talking about the club sides of Legia Warsaw and Górnik Zabrze. Between them, they produce a number of quality players, and it all comes together in the early 1970s when I think it's Kazimierz Gorzyk becomes a national coach. A character that hopefully Paul can give us a bit more detail about, but I think he was a bit more of he had a liberal attitude. This is his reputation. He didn't really follow the strict constraints of communism as was the regime at that particular time. And I think he harnessed the family culture with his players and was able to get the best out of what was clearly a very talented bunch of footballers.
That's right. But I need to shame you, Jamie, because I thought at some point you're talking about Casemiro. I was like, what? But you actually meant Kazimierz Górski. That was the manager.
That's good shaming because that's my pronunciation. I was doing so well, and here we are, and I've finally dropped the pronunciation ball. So I take that shame on board.
So what was he like as a character or as a manager, Pawel? Was Jamie right with his description of him being a bit more relaxed?
I guess you can call it that. First of all, it's the history of the man. He was from Lwów, which a person from Lwów in a post-Second World War Poland was someone who, because that used to be Poland, right? It became part of, it's part of Ukraine, part of Soviet Union, Poland shifted westward. So there was certain aura about him being from the town, and something about like a defiance to the communist state, because people wouldn't want to admit, oh, that was always like this. And it's like, well, not always, because that guy was actually born what now is Soviet Union. So there was also a bit of a reminder that, hey, that the borders didn't look like this all the time, and there was a big injustice after the war. So there was one of the demeanors that he always had about him. So that's what, to a degree, that endeared people who this anti-establishment movement at the time. That there was something about him that endeared him to the Polish public, basically. And he was known for his very short answers about how simple is football. And he was like, well, football is a super simple game. There's one ball, two goals, and you need to score more than that. That's how we win.
He was known for his catchphrases.
That's right.
He?
That's
Yeah,
right.
he had a bit of a reputation for his catchphrases. I think one of them was, "You can win, you can lose, and you can draw."
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. That would be a news to Ted Lasso as well. That the draw was possible.
So yeah, he would have been a bit of a challenge to do the post-match interviews with.
But yeah, potentially. Although he would enjoy doing them because he would win most of the time. So once you win, the interviews are much easier than when you have to explain your losses.
This is true. So he had been at Legia Warsaw beforehand, and then he was coach of the under-23s or under-21s, I think, before taking the national job. So presumably he got to know and work with the players over a sort of quite a period of time.
Although I don't think that he worked with most of the players, because he trained Legia Warsaw before he took the Polish job. He did it in the early 60s. Then he actually, and the late 60s was another Warsaw team, the one that was owned by the police force, was Gwardia Warsaw manager. And then he had a little gap before he became the Poland national team manager. What he changed in a way what he also the first rounds, he kind of got the players, and there was one team at the moment. Currently, you've got the team playing at the Olympics. You've got under 21s, under 18s. He was the boss of the national team that would play all the competitions, including Olympics and the World Cup. So he took Poland to the gold medal at the Olympics in 1972. So that was the first amazing success, and that he had with the team, and he kind of grew with the players, and they trusted one another, and for the manager, and he kind of trusted them. Then that win in 72 made those players. And sometimes there is a cliche that when you win, you kind of gain amazing confidence. If you keep on winning run, even if you concede a goal, you still, we're going to score, right? We're going to win. And that's what made the team, the gold medal, and beating USSR as well in the final. That was playing, in the communist times, playing USSR and beating them. There were a couple of absolutely amazing historic matches in several sports. In Poland beat them in volleyball. It was like winning the war. When Poland beat them in ice hockey, it was like winning the war. And winning that final was winning the war in 1972. It was a classic.
That Olympic Games win is a huge stepping stone in this story, isn't it, Jamie?
We've talked about Olympic football previously on this podcast, and in the kind of the boundaries of the country that we live in, all of us live in the United Kingdom, Olympic football is kind of looked down upon, frowned upon, because the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, they don't compete in Olympic football, mostly because it's they're professionals, even though nowadays it's an under 23 tournament. But beyond the shores of the UK, Olympic football has been taken serious, and it's a real big deal. If you look back to when Brazil have won their 2 Olympic titles in recent times, they regard that as good as winning World Cups. That's how important it is to Brazil. Nigeria, famously in the Atlanta Olympic Games '96, winning it was a real kind of watershed moment. So I think Poland's achievement of winning the Olympic football tournament in 1972 shouldn't be overlooked as just like a kind of a meh moment. It is a big deal. It really is a big deal. And it also, as Pawel's talking about, it's kind of generating that kind of cultural winning. And this is what the team garner as they go towards Munich again in 2 years' time, where they come through a qualifying group, brilliant World Cup qualifying group. It's 3 teams. It's England, Wales, and Poland. When World Cup qualifying was very simple, 3 teams played over a period of a year and a half, and Poland going into that tournament are slowly becoming one of the best football teams in the world. And although we're going to get on and talk about that brilliant England game, there's a few things that happened before that. Poland were definitely one of the top teams in 1973, and they were definitely on the right trajectory, whereby England, I think, were probably on the wrong trajectory with Sir Alf Ramsey. And I think they were bona fide group winners, and they proved that when they go on to the finals in 74.
And it's certainly true that if nothing else, Brian Clough hadn't been paying much attention to their success with with his view of how that qualification. And you're absolutely right. It is interesting seeing a team through. We grow up kind of through the prism of it being England's failure, England's inability to score in that crucial game, rather than viewing it around actually this Polish side that are growing and are becoming really good. And you're absolutely right. You have these two directions of travel: this aging kind of Alf Ramsey side, and this new upcoming Polish team, don't you?
I wouldn't call the English side aging or bad. I think that what happened in that group was Poland beat England, and that was a big shock in Poland. I don't think anybody expected that 2-0, and that was the game that Mark Farland had this late tackle on Lubański. Lubański scored the first goal. I can't remember who scored the second goal. Poland went on to win 2-0 that game. And I think then Poland lost and won against Wales, and then England
drew both their home games. So obviously the famous 1-1, but they'd beaten Wales in Wales, and then they drew with Wales at Wembley 1-1. So going into that final game, well, the final 2 games, when Poland beat Wales 3-0, that really put them in pole position, because it was a group of small goals. Not many goals were scored in that group, and the 3-0 advantage that Poland had given them the superiority, whereby they could go to Wembley on that night in 1973 and afford not to lose the game. They could take a point and qualify. The pressure was on England to win the football match.
That's right. And Poland went on to draw that game, but using in modern terms, that was a classic smash and grab. So that's why, and that was an amazing team, a team that went on to come third in the World Cup a year later, a team that won the Olympic Games, beating the Soviets in the semi, and then as you know the war game, and then beating Hungary in the final, who were not minnows at the time, and England absolutely hammered. You know, if you look at that game, how that ended up 1-1 rather than 5-1 to England. So it's one of those games that the ball just would not go in. And one counter attack, and Shilton lets the ball through. Interestingly, guys, that match, one of the players that played in that game in a Polish team shared my surname. Absolutely no relation. So my surname sounds like I could copyright as a password, but in Poland, it's not that uncommon.
It is down to an outstanding performance from Jan Tomaszewski. Can I get my pronunciation correct on that one?
That's good.
And Graham, you alluded to Brian Clough before the game, and then double downs after the game, I think, calling him a clown very unfairly. And I think Brian Clough came out afterwards and said, I think he was angling himself to put Ramsey's achievements down so he could put himself in prime position to become the England manager, which never happened. But he wasn't a clown, and there are some brilliant saves in that football match that he makes. I mean, I think there's one from Clark and one from Chivers. I mean, there's a whole string of saves, but he nearly completely spoils the whole event in the very first minute when he almost gives a gift to Leeds legend Alan. Is it Alan Clark up front? I think. Yeah.
Clark,
and then when he does, he kind of almost gives the ball away. He recovers it back and then breaks his finger in the process in the very first minute.
And continues on to play. The only goal conceded was, I think, Clark scores the penalty to make it 1-1.
It's an extraordinary thing, because the Jan Tomaszewski is the Polish player most known from that era by most England fans, ignoring these extraordinary other players. But it's Tomaszewski and Clough's comments on it which absolutely dominate, isn't it?
That game that was the second kind of stepping stone for that team, because it was considered impossible, to come to Wembley and beat England. It was considered impossible, and get the result basically. So that was the second thing that the second huge game that made the team. And how difficult it is. How many times after that game did Poland beat England?
I think it's only once. I think Poland have only
Yes,
beaten England.
No, never.
Oh my goodness me! Really?
So that was the only win Poland
Wow.
had against England, home or away, was that 2-0 that Lubański scored the first goal. Right? There were a couple of draws in the 90s, but Poland never. That was the only time, that first leg in the group, that Poland never beat England. So that shows you the scale of the task. And then people say, oh, well, it wasn't an aging team. It was still a pretty brilliant team. And yeah, beating England and at any moment in time is a tall order.
It was a collection of brilliant players. I mean, you could run through the whole team. We've talked about Lubański and the loss. I mean, there's a what-if moment. If he wouldn't have picked up the injury and would have gone to the World Cup finals in 1974 in Munich, what Poland could have done. But, I mean, they had a pretty good, I call it a backup. It's not really a backup, in Lato. What a striker. And then before we talk about Lato, I have to do this, Pawel. So on these podcasts, Graham and I have a bit of a love-in with the greatest football film of all time, Michael Caine and Sylvester Stallone in The Escape to Victory. And Poland in this team have a superstar from that particular film. Graham, you're nodding away. You've done your research. Who's our man in this particular team?
Kazi Dana, as he was known for his appearance in Man City. Kazimir Dana, he does appear in Escape to Victory, and he was an absolute star, wasn't he? I mean, when you or a sort of star player, he had a very short, or sort of not actually that short. He was there for 3 years, but kind of short-lived. It was a bit damaged by or blighted by injury when he was at Manchester City. And he had 3 years there from about 78, I think. But still, very well regarded by Man City fans, even over that period of time. And then he ends his career, doesn't he, in North American Soccer League?
Absolutely, yes. Where they do shootouts the right way.
He was famous for scoring goals from corners. He could that guy could bend it and score from corners. So he was whenever he took a corner, it was considered to be a dangerous situation.
That's fantastic.
Me and Jamie have definitely played with players who try to score from corners. It's not necessarily the same thing.
My limited football ability when I do play, and I have played, and I take corners, which I love taking. Sometimes I look in the box and I think, I'm just going to shoot instead.
So Dana was a real star of this team, and actually he'd had a fantastic Olympics, hadn't he?
He was like the midfield maestro. He was the beating heart of the team and distributing the ball. He was great at striking the ball, great at free kicks. He was taking the penalties as well for the team, and he linked up play tremendously well between the defense and attack. But the team had many superstars. There was the centre forward Sharma. He was very powerful, very kind of old style, extremely good with his head. Latter on the right wing, super fast, super skillful player, played for a very long time. It was one of the main players in 1982 World Cup, and he was the top scorer in 1974. So very long career. He was probably the longest career of this golden generation of Polish player. There was a defender called Gorgon, fantastic player. He used to play for Górnik Zabrze. Very tough defender, very strong to play against. So there was a number of great football players basically playing in this national team.
I remember Lato really clearly from the 82 World Cup, I think it was. He didn't have much hair by then.
That's right.
He was kind of like Archie Gell. But yeah, as you say, extraordinary to think that that kind of 8 years on from '74, he's still sort of thriving at that level. So, Jamie, the '74 World Cup in Germany. Well, what are we doing format-wise? We always like to revisit World
It's
Cup
changed.
formats.
Yeah, it changes again from 1970. We've still got 16 teams. We still have the customary 4 groups with 4 teams. And then FIFA have
Can
introduced
I at this point say, can I just say, 16 teams, 4 groups. I mean, it couldn't be much simpler, could it? It really seems to be well set up for.
yeah, and
Right, but
the top 2 still qualify for the next stage, which was previously a quarter final. It's now been changed into a group stage, and I don't know the reasons for this entirely. I've tried to research it, but I think my instinct tells me that FIFA were worried about the effects of the penalty kicks, because the penalty kicks had been introduced and it was now the way to decide knockout competition. So by going to a second phase, which was 2 groups of 4, with the top team of each group qualifying for the final and the teams finishing in second place qualifying for a third and fourth place playoff, my instinct tells me that FIFA were guarded over the penalty shootout, and I think they were worried it could spoil their football competition. Obviously, the opposite has been true, as we've seen in World Cups. So by going to this second group stage, they effectively removed the chance of penalty kicks happening in all but 2 games, which would have been the third and fourth place playoff and the final itself. So I think that may be the reason why, but I don't know. But what I do know is that Poland had an absolute massive group. They're in there with Argentina, who will go on and win the World Cup the next edition, Italy, who had been to the World Cup final the previous edition and would go on and win it in the 82 World Cup, and not a big hitter, but thereby right, Haiti. Yeah, Haiti.
yeah.
But I think you're in there with Argentina and Italy, and you're kind of thinking you've got your work cut out. But the opposite is true, Powell, isn't it? I think they smash it.
The group stage was amazing. I mean, at the time I was 3 year old, so got zero recollection of the World Cups. Again, it's speaking to my dad of what happened. But yeah, Poland started really well. The first game against Argentina, and Poland beats Argentina 3-2, and it's inside 10 minutes, Poland is 2-0 up. So Argentinians are taken completely by surprise by this team that they expected to walk around and waltz through, and within 10 minutes they 2-0 down. The game finished 3-2, but it was great start by Poland. The second game was easier. That was 7-0 against Haiti. Sharmak scored a hat trick. The latter scored 2, I think, at the time, and Dana as well. But that was put Poland on 4 points and had a little like the decider against Italy. Now, in that game, Poland could have afforded a draw because we already had 4 points, so we were top of the group by then. Italy drew against Argentina. It was the question about who between Argentina and Poland, because it was a given that Argentina will beat Haiti, who's going to progress to the next stage. And Poland beat Italy and eliminated Italy. And again, this game was a bit easier because Poland was 2-0 up before the Italians scored a goal. So the group stage absolutely lit up. And when you look at the results against Haiti, when you look at the Argentina and the Italy result, yeah, they were wins, reasonably comfortable, but they were not crazy scores. That 7-0 was like, wow, that's just slightly different. So you could tell how technically good this Polish team was to be able to play through a very defensive team. And yes, Haiti actually scored against both Italy and Argentina, so they didn't manage against Poland. So they were minnows in a group, but what Poland achieved this in game was also pretty remarkable.
Yeah, the Haitian goal against Italy broke a string of I can't remember exactly, but it's like 15, 16 matches where Italy hadn't conceded a goal. And the Haitian goal in the World Cup was the first one they conceded past Dino's off for quite some time.
They've really found their feet in this tournament. They go through to this next group of 4. This time they draw the hosts, West Germany, Sweden, and Yugoslavia. But again, this Poland side seems it's on a really strong run by this stage, isn't it? It has quite a strong start to this group as well.
I'll go a tiny bit back. So because in this World Cup there was like Germans, like, don't you just love the football team? In that World Cup, in the last game in their group, the East Germany and West Germany were in the same group, and East Germans really wanted to beat West Germany. It's like, yeah, communism better than capitalism, and so on and so forth. But from the perspective of West Germans, they actually looked up what was going on and they thought, you know what? Actually, that would be good if we lose. So, and the reason why is because had they won and topped their group, they would have been in the same group with Brazil and the Netherlands. And just look what happened to East Germany, who topped that group. Yeah, they didn't manage to get out. Netherlands won that group. Brazil came second. So the Germans thought, you know what? We quite fancy ourselves against Poland, Sweden, and Yugoslavia, right? And unfortunately, they were rewarded with the World Cup win for shenanigans. But it's just, don't you just think this calculating? So sometimes when you this is one of the classic examples when you hear people, oh no, we're here to win all the games. Like, no, hang on. If you want to win the World Cup, sometimes you need to stop and say, you know what, we'll give these communists a win. Let them be happy and then lose to the Netherlands.
The West Germans have form on this. They really do. I mean, we've discussed this previously when we talked about the great Algerian team from 1982. Fast forward, you got the disgrace of Gijón as well, where the West Germans and the Austrians collude for a result that's convenient for both. So, this is a theme that starts, around about this particular period of time.
And the Germans knew exactly, well, the West Germans knew exactly what's going on. So they had Genagis, like this ruthless streak. It's like, we don't care, It's like, yeah, there'll be a massive propaganda coup for the East Germans, but yeah, just let them go there. It's fine.
I mean, it's just triggering my World Cup history memory. This even goes back to 1954 in Switzerland when West Germany were in the same group as Hungary, and the two went on to meet in the final. And the West Germans played a slightly weaker team, I think, at that point because it benefited them in the draw. So, they're geniuses. They're looking at the bigger picture. It's no coincidence that they win so often because they are looking at the bigger picture. They're not just looking at what's going on in front of them. They really do have a history of this in the World Cup.
They're ultimate competitors. So Poland win. They beat Sweden first up 1-0, and your man Lato scoring again.
Tomaszewski saved the penalty in that game. So he was, he definitely wasn't a clown.
His reputation definitely building up. They then play Yugoslavia in the next game, don't they?
That's right. And it's a 2-1, and Dana scores a penalty, and Lato scores the second goal. So, and that's sandwiched around the Yugoslavian equalizer. When Yugoslavia had a pretty good team at the time. Unfortunately, the Germans won their games with the higher score. So coming to the last game, they could have drawn that game and gone through. So they had the reversal of the Poland v England situation. A draw was good for West Germany to go to the final. Poland had to win that game.
The West Germany-Poland game, even though it's a group game in this new format from 1974, it is a semi-final, albeit the advantage is with West Germany that they can afford to have two of the results go in their favour. There's a brilliant Twitter account I found earlier today, and it's called World Cup Nearly Men, and it really focuses on this game, West Germany-Poland. And I think the suggestion is that this Polish team was so good they could have given the Netherlands a game in the final. But the pictures shared on this Twitter account for this particular match, the pitch is it's unplayable. I mean, if the Polish team had a reputation for a passing style, it's out the window because you can't move the clips are brilliant. I've got it in front of me again now. I'm watching it. I've watched it many times. They're knocking balls at pace and they're literally stopping 3 meters in front of
That's
them
right.
dead
Yeah,
because of the saturation of the pitch. And again, you can't help but think, does that really play into the hands of the West Germans, who are a bit more pragmatic? And we see that in the final against the Dutch, in terms of how they achieved their results, and a disadvantage for the Polish team to play their fluid tactical game.
And this Polish side was a strong footballing passing side, wasn't it?
yeah, very much so. There was one moment in that game when the latter shoots and it's a certain goal, but the paddle saves it. It's not the German keeper. The ball just stops in the water, and the keeper gets to it. So there were a couple of there would have been a goal. There would have been a goal. It's that game. There was a big discussion. The game should not have been played. It should have been postponed. It should have been postponed, but for some reason wasn't. Interestingly, that World Cup. If you look at the sequence of games as well, that although these were groups, it was Brazil v Netherlands in the final game in the other group, and it was Poland v West Germany in this one, and they were both like semi-finals. Basically, it was the winner takes all. So actually, somehow FIFA conspired to, despite having the groups, to create the two semi-finals at the end of the group. It is in both groups. It's great.
The 1950 World Cup was similar because the 1950 World Cup didn't have a final. It was played in a group of 4. But if you look at the history books, it would say Brazil lost to Uruguay in the 1950 final. That was the final group game, and Uruguay won it, and by virtue won the group, won the World Cup. But yeah, it's uncanny how these things just seem to work out in FIFA's favour.
Yeah, that's right.
In the battle of the flooded pitch, Germany come out winners, don't they? They nick West Germany nick a 1-0 win, don't they?
Yes, Muller scored a goal. West Germany won and went on to win the final. Poland played the third place playoff against Brazil and won. Jago Slata scored his 7th goal of this World Cup against Brazil.
It's quite an impressive feat to have beaten Brazil and Argentina in a tournament. Not many people do that.
And Italy.
And Italy, yeah.
And Italy as well.
Yeah. I mean, how many and they played West Germany. I mean, you're talking about the best 4 football nations in World Cup history right there.
It is quite something, isn't it? So that side after this World Cup, is what sort of happens to them? Does it sort of fade away, or is there a kind of legacy left behind?
There is. So first, what happened after was Kazimierz Górski finishes being a manager. So there is a new chap that took over. He was his assistant manager, I believe. So he led Poland in 1978 World Cup. Poland, the rules in this 78 World Cup were similar to there was like group stage and then another group stage. In the second group stage, Poland ends up in a group with Argentina and Brazil, and that is a game that is remembered in Poland because Dana missed a penalty. Had he scored, it could have finished something else, although in hindsight, people say that the referees were so favoring Argentina in this World Cup that it's just, nothing could have happened. That group, when there was Peru, Poland, Argentina, and Brazil, and then the winner would go to play the final. In that game, the end result, the winner of the group was decided by the goal difference, and Argentina was scoring quite a lot of goals against Peru in the last game. It's exactly what they needed. So, but yes, from the Polish perspective, that 78 World Cup is that potential. It's kind of what if moment, a bit like Harry Kane missing a penalty against France, right? If he scored, we never know what would have happened. And this is exactly the same discussion after that World Cup. Had Dana scored that penalty against Argentina, who knows what would have happened, because again, they went on to win the World Cup. So had the goal go in, maybe, just maybe. So majority of the 78 team is gone by the time Poland plays in 1982 World Cup. And one of the two guys that are still there, Lato plays still the right wing, and he's still a stalwart in the team. Sharmak is still there, who scored a lot of goals in 74. He was he was towards the top of the goal scorers. So Poland had two guys in the top three goal scorers of the tournament in 74. So Sharmak still plays, but he's an impact player off the bench by then. And there is a new guy playing up front called Smolarek. There is a number of young players that will be the base of the Górnik revival in the 80s that play in that team as well. And there is a very good goalkeeper that was the first ever Polish player to win the European Cup or a Champions League, called Maszczyk. He wins it later on with FC Porto, the European Cup. So he's the first guy that ever did it, and he was then followed by Boniek with Juventus. So that team is playing some fantastic football in '82 and gets on to come third again. Poland beats France 3-2. This is the France that is pretty down after being knocked out in a semi-final, a crazy semi-final against West Germany. Poland loses to Italy 2-0 in the semis, but that's mainly because Boniek gets the second yellow in the last game in a group of three. There's a group of three between Poland, Soviet Union, and Belgium after the initial qualifying, and Poland beats Belgium in the first game 3-0. The Soviets beat Belgium 1-0. So basically, it's a game Poland can afford to draw to get through. Poland does draw that game 0-0, and that's one of that game is, I remember that game, and that game is remembered for. That was another game against Soviet Union, right? It was like the winning draw, you can say, but that was considered to be yet another war against the Soviets, because 82 is the height of the martial law in Poland. Solidarity is crashed. There are lots of people in jail. There is army on the streets. The thaw just starts. But I still remember as a kid walking around the city, seeing tanks on the junctions and soldiers, and effectively not knowing what's going to happen next. And that game, the Polish communist television has extreme problems transmitting, because the number of chanting on the terraces of Solidarność, they just try to muffle the sound. The banners denouncing the communism, the Soviets, the oppression. And obviously this is in Spain, right? So the camera operator just latches onto this, and it's shown on right in front, Polish television, height of the martial law, the Soviets will be overcome. And that was extremely uplifting for that particular reason. There is a massive acrimony on the pitch. It's like animosity between the two players, because again, this is the nation that is oppressed, the nation that was basically forced to abandon the lurch for freedom by the danger of Soviet tanks rolling in, like they rolled in Czechoslovakia in 1978. And those guys, for them, this is like the war. This is the battle to beat the Soviets. Obviously, they can't take the tanks, but they can eliminate Soviets from the World Cup. So it was, lots of these guys later on said that this was the match. For them, this was it. This was the most important game. Seeing the people, seeing the banners, knowing what people in Poland must be seeing, and basically this is it. We shall overcome. And yes, as a country, we did. In communism finished finally. So that was one of those little chinks, little steps. When you speak to the guys that worked in the resistance at the time, they said this was the thing they kind of gave that after the absolute darkness of a year of martial law, or half a year of martial law between the December 81 and summer of 82, that was the first ray of light. It's saying, you know what, communism is not forever. And it wasn't. So yeah, that World Cup is definitely remembered for that particular game.
It's incredible how a game can mean so much more to people, and I do think it's incredible how across sport you have find these kind of these games that crop up, which put kind of enemies together, or oppressors, or oppressors and the oppressed. It's extraordinary how these things come about, and of course, because they're in a sporting framework, they have to happen. They kind of, there's a cool. It's really weird that you get these situations. So you have, to all intents and purposes, a sort of probably not spectacularly interesting 0-0 draw to the rest of the world between Poland and Soviet Union is like this extraordinary game.
It was also one of the first times that you would see people taking the ball to the corner flag and literally being there. And one of I don't know if it was the first time ever done, but the Polish striker took the ball to the corner and was like taking kicks, like literal kicks from the Soviets, and he was just standing there thinking, "I'm not gonna move. I'm not gonna move."
That's a great thought. I mean, I always wondered who was the first person to do that. It's possible, actually. It's a good question, Jamie. You're our football historian.
We talked about this when you had one of your favourite teams. We talked about Swindon Town and Don Rogers in the very last minute when they're playing in the League Cup final in 1969-70, I think it was, against Arsenal.
Yeah.
And in the dying minutes, Swindon are winning 2-1. And Rogers gets the ball on the halfway line. Everyone is committed behind him because there's been a counter-attack. And the natural thing we were thinking is you run the ball to the corner flag. But no, he runs straight at goal and puts away his second goal and wins the game 3-1 for Swindon. So it's a really good question. I think Pawel may have hit the nail on the head. I think maybe 1982 is the first time we're actually seeing these kind of tactical shift changes in football, where people are thinking more about the clock than the goal scoring.
I certainly never seen it before, but I remember this scene of the guy like literally in a corner being kicked to ground, and he's just like refusing to go down. Effectively, he's saying, "No way." The referee plays advantage. He's just standing there.
It's clearly that has been a high point of Polish national football. 2 third-place finishes within across a 3 World Cup period, and it's been a sort of slightly tougher or drier period for Poland at World Cup since, hasn't it?
Yes. So in 1986, one Gary Lineker condemns Poland to. Poland actually starts well in this World Cup in a group. We beat Portugal 1-0. Then I think we draw against Morocco 0-0. And it's like for England, actually, it was much worse because England lost to Portugal the first game. And it's like winner takes all, effectively. Whoever wins goes through. I think Poland might actually go through with a draw or even a loss, and Poland goes through with a loss, but England would have been eliminated. They lost. Lineker scores 3 goals. And Maszczyk at the time in the goal, so he was amazing in 82. He's not as good in 86, but Poland progresses through in the group stage. The first knockout game is against Brazil, and it's a 4-0. It's an awful game, and there is another like folk story. Boniek, who used to play for Juventus at the time, and Piechniczek, who was the manager of the team, they show up in a studio post-match conference. And effectively, people who were spoiled with 74, 78, 82, 2 third places, quarterfinals in 78, say, this is absolute rubbish. What have you done? And then Boniek says, you know what? I wish I see a Polish team going through in the group stages of the World Cup. And that's referred to in Boniek's curse, because that doesn't happen until Qatar.
Yeah.
And in a true style, the manager does it, just like Piechniczek is immediately sacked. It's the same thing happens. So although the curse was broken, Poland goes through the group and loses to France. The curse continues because the manager who does it immediately gets dismissed as he's too defensive. The Portuguese manager, ex-Portuguese manager, it gets hired. And it's just absolutely dreadful. Poland loses to Moldova, and he's gone by now. So the curse lives on. But yes, that's the team kind of deteriorates. Football changes in Poland dramatically. So all those rules of people drafting soldiers to Legia, the miners being paid the most money, that completely ends with the end of communism. Football is very much ruled by cash, and that is not present in Poland. So the league gets worse, and over time, the Polish league is not the strongest, and that's probably true about all the former Eastern Bloc countries. The success follows the money, definitely, and we see massive acceleration of this in the 90s with Premier League being incepted and the leagues in the West getting stronger and not so in the Eastern Europe.
Right. Well, we should get to ranking this Polish team. We're going to focus on the 74, I guess. Well, it's probably 74 to 82, maybe the whole era. Jamie, again, with our 5 categories: all-time greats, true greats, touch of greatness, edge of greatness, or blink of greats. Where are you landing?
Well, I'm treading with a bit of trepidation. Clearly, I feel I'm being judged on this one more than the Gornick one. I think this is a fantastic story. Even before, we've had the wonderful insights from Pawel on this, which has been amazing. I was, as a lover of the World Cup, like all of us are, no doubt, I was well versed in this team. I was far too young to know and see them. 82 is the first memory for me, and that was the Polish team that got to the semi-finals, and I fell in love with Boniek, and it kind of started my love affair with the World Cup and looking at the history of the game. And you can't overlook this brilliant Polish team, and they were considered by some to be on a par with the Netherlands. I think the Netherlands gets a lot of the focus and the glory because of their contribution in terms of total football. But I don't think this Polish team was far away from the playing style that we were seeing the Dutch play. They've absolutely come through the group amazingly. They've then, on a waterlogged pitch, been beaten by the West Germans. Everyone gets beaten by the West Germans, so it's no big surprise. As Gary Lineker once said about the game played by 11 men against 11 men, and the end West Germany win. That was the way it was back then, and we know all about that as England fans. So I've flirted with all-time greats because I think they're definitely in that bracket. But I think I'm going to start with putting them in and see where it takes us as true greats, which is the number 2, and that's because they didn't make the final, and I think that's harsh, very harsh. But I'm going to kick us off by putting them in the second bracket, which is true greatness.
Pavel, what about you?
From the purely footballing perspective, I would agree with Jamie. They didn't make the final, but they definitely pulled one of the first bricks out of the Berlin Wall in that famous game against Soviet Union. And that, on a global scale, we wouldn't be in a place we now if it didn't start maybe in that game. So on that alone, I'll make them a true great.
Once again, there's a case for them to be.
Don't do it.
Not
Don't
great.
do it.
Without them, we wouldn't be where we are. Surely it's the definition of them. For a team that has Kazi Dana in it, they have to be high up in my book. He was an absolute star, and Boniek 8 years later as well. And throughout this, Lato, who seemed to play in every World Cup I watched for years and years, and looked the same from what I could tell across it all. So they did have some genuine stars. I think the only thing that goes, they're definitely unlucky. The 74 World Cup, they're definitely unlucky to end up on that waterlogged pitch, and it's a bit of a. Without that, we may never know. I think. I'm probably somewhere between touch of great and true great, but I think there's enough. I've been sold by the. I think bringing down communism is more than enough to lift it up that category. So I think I'm going to say the Poland World Cup 74-82 true greats. So we have one last bit of business where we like to consider if we did have a time machine and could go back to any of these moments across these great football sides, these Polish sides, where we might want to go back and relive. I say relive a memory. We weren't born for most of this, but um, uh, Jamie, where would you go back to?
Yeah, I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. I mean, there are so many football matches, so many players I'd like to see, but I can't help myself. I would love to see a live coin toss deciding a football match, and I'd love to go back to that semi-final with Gornik and AS Roma to just witness something that I've never seen other than deciding the referee deciding who's going to kick off first, where the importance is slightly less significant than it is who qualifies for a final of a major European Cup. So I'd like to go and witness, with all the brilliant things that we've discussed, I still would like to go watch a coin toss to decide a massive game.
Pavel, what about you? If you could go back to any of those games, either Poland or Gornik, what would you like to go and see?
Strangely, it's probably the game that I've seen the most, which is the 1973 Wembley match and when won. But what I would love to do is be there without knowing what's going to happen. So watching that game, knowing that draw is enough, and seeing all those incredible saves, and thinking, "Oh my God, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen." Thinking the goal is coming, and then prevailing. That would have been absolutely ecstatic moment. Although, yeah, like I said, that game was doing rounds on Polish television when I was a kid, many times. So I remember quite a lot of fragments from this game. But I would love to watch it without knowing what's going to happen, if I could.
That's a beautiful thing. It is. It's a game that got replayed in as a clips program, and especially I think both me and Jamie will have vivid memories from it around 1986 when there was that big Poland England clash with at the World Cup. I think it just got played over and over. The kind of, is it going to be a Tomaszewski? I think it came up in every bit of commentary again in it. So it's definitely an English folklore almost as much. I think I would have to go. It's a sort of a tragic game to go and see on the one hand, but it's I would. I always love seeing a game with absurd weather, and I think the waterlogged pitch for that what essentially became the pseudo semi-final, and to see just how much of an impact that would have had, and what a different story that would have been had it not rained. So I'm going back there, I think. Pawel, thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely fascinating on both those sides. Some really great insight and stories on that.
No, thanks for having me, guys. It was a pleasure.
Jamie, thank you for your time as ever.
My pleasure, and it really was my pleasure. Absolutely fantastic insight, and one of the key reasons why we love doing these things, because we get these wonderful stories from the great people like Pawel.
That's true. That's been fantastic. That's all we've got time for. A quick reminder, you can get our podcast every week, every Thursday. If you subscribe to them, they'll come in automatically via whatever your normal podcast platform is. Do subscribe, do like us, do tell your friends about the podcast, and we'll speak to you again soon.